Welcome back to another episode of How Did They Grow? I created this podcast because I wanted you to learn how other coaches, freelancers, service providers, and course sellers are growing their business, landing 10 to 20 new clients every single month, paying them 50, 100, 200K months. See, if they've done it, you can too. And that's just the reality. And I want you to listen to these podcasts to understand what strategies are they using, what techniques are they exploring, because it's in these gems that you can apply it to your business and actually scale things up. When you're ready and you feel like you actually want to learn practical, proven methodologies, or even you want to hire a team that can build you a profitable personal brand, book in a chat with our team because we can guarantee you go viral and guarantee you get clients for your business. All right. So Laura, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I really, really appreciate you. So to begin with, for our listeners and our viewers, can you just give me a quick summary in terms of who you are, your story, and kind of how you're serving today?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. So I'm based in San Francisco, California. I am a nervous system coach, expert, specialist. I'm an external collaborator with a Stanford cardiologist as well. That partnership happened in the last year or so, which is super exciting. So my work essentially is with a lot of high-performing executives, teams, founders, entrepreneurs, and my specialty is helping them to perform at their optimal, to really prevent burnout, also to recover from burnout. And again, like I said, really live to their full potential using the power of their nervous system, because it is a superpower. It's a superpower in your business. And your whole life, honestly. My background is actually in psychology. So I originally was studying psychology in college. I have myself in the past version of me was very kind of anxious. I had a lot of thoughts that were very critical of me, like imposter syndrome. I feel like a lot of your audience might relate to this a little bit, like never feeling like it's good enough, overthinking things. And I knew it was kind of hindering my progress, like where I wanted to be and really be in terms of like my full potential in life. And so I think I went the psychology route, honestly, to really learn more about me, how I could figure out what was going on and really shift and change it. But I also wanted to shift and help others as well, and really help them live their full potential. So I thought psychology was the route to do that. And it was amazing. I learned a lot in college taking that program. And at the same time, I was also finding that it was kind of limited, meaning even though I was learning a lot about like the brain and like how to reframe thoughts. And I think if your audience does any type of mindset work, maybe you'll be familiar with this. It's like, whatever thoughts you're thinking, try to change those negative thoughts into more positive ones, have a different outlook on things, right? And it was good, but it wasn't really sticking. Like I felt like there was something else. I felt like I had a lot of efforting I had to do all the time when it came to this mindset work I was kind of being taught even in my psychology program. So I actually paused that, and I decided to get curious and figure out there was something I was missing. And that's when I found the work of the nervous system, specifically what's called the polyvagal theory. And everything fell into place from there in terms of really understanding like this is the thing, like this is what has been missing. And once I started to really learn about my own nervous system and really work with my nervous system, I think within a matter even just of a few weeks, I started to notice some big changes in terms of like my thoughts, some of my behaviors. And of course, as I continued on the journey, it just got better and better. And a lot of that anxiety and overwhelm and imposter syndrome started to really shift, and it wasn't really there anymore. And that's when I knew this is the path for me. And I want to bring this to more people.
Amazing. Love it. Okay. So let's jump straight into it. I'm really, really curious. So nervous system, obviously I study biology, but I know not everyone has. So if you were going to explain the nervous system to someone who has no background in science at all, how would you explain it?
Yeah, so essentially your nervous system is the control center for your thoughts, your behaviors, your emotions. If you were to think of it like a pyramid or even like an iceberg, at the bottom, let's take the iceberg as an example. So iceberg, right, there's like a little tip, you can see the actual at the surface, and then there's like a whole big chunk underneath. So the whole big chunk underneath essentially is your nervous system. So the top part is like your cognitive rational thoughts, like the conscious thoughts that you're aware of, the ones that you just like, the behaviors that you're aware of, right? And like everything else underneath is essentially your nervous system, that subconscious part of you. The nervous system the part of the nervous system I work with is called the autonomic, meaning automatic. So it's a part of your system where you don't have to think about it. Like it's where the fight or flight is. You don't think about fight or flight, it just comes on, right? Or you don't have to think about breathing or your respiration or your heart rate, digestion. That's all linked to your nervous system.
Okay. You said that was one part. So what was the other part?
Yeah. So the other piece of this is like, so the nervous system is also a hierarchical state, meaning like it has the top of the ladder, so to speak, is like where we're designed to live in. This is like our high growth state. It's called the green zone. So if you also think of it maybe in terms of a traffic light, like green meaning like growth and full of potential, being able to connect, have empathy, be strategic, all of that. And then you get into yellow, that's like fight or flight. So that's the part of the system where now we're in survival and your like thoughts become very urgent here. You feel like you need to mobilize, you need to act. And then we have red, where the system starts to go into a shutdown response, where then we're feeling very apathetic. We don't feel like we have a lot of energy. There's like foggy thinking. We kind of give up here. And that's the last kind of resort of the system is when we get to red.
Okay, I get you. So I also want to break this down as well for my own understanding. So you obviously mentioned the iceberg kind of analogy, the top being conscious behavior.
Yes.
Things that we can typically be aware about what we're doing. Is everything underneath the iceberg, that's all subconscious, like that, or unconscious, like that's all basically happening autonomously, right? Just automatically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And within that is the red, yellow, green system.
Exactly.
Okay, so what would something green be that's happening autonomously? It's like you mentioned high growth state, for example.
So you mean like on your conscious awareness, you mean in that green, or I see, sorry, at the subconscious level. So excellent question. So when we're in the green, we make better choices too. So we feel more connected, first of all, to each other. So there's better communication because the parts of our brain, like where empathy is, or just our ability to connect with one another, that's turned on essentially. Types of foods we might be eating. We might be more geared to eat things that we know are really going to nourish us and give us the proper nutrition to give us energy when we're more in that green zone.
Oh, state. I see. Okay, so it's a state like you want to be in.
State, exactly. Yeah, it's a state. Okay. Also, when we're in this state or in this green zone, we are our cognitive function is more available to us. We'll talk more about the brain science, but like essentially the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your strategic thinking, your ability to plan, your creative process, all like basically your money makers. That is what is also more available to you when you're in the green zone.
Okay. And so what you do is getting people to the green zone.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How do you first identify kind of which zone you're in?
Oh, that's another great question. So a lot of my clients, and this makes sense because most of us have been taught to really focus and notice our thoughts more than anything else. So there's different ways you can tell someone. There's like 7 different pathways. The most common one I use with my clients is thoughts. You can also use, of course, behaviors, emotions, physical sensations in your body, but we'll give some examples of thoughts. So, because I think most of your listeners will relate to thoughts. So when we're in green, we feel like everything's kind of more possible. We feel like almost anything's possible. There's a lot of potential. I have plenty of time. There's no need to rush this. We feel really safe, meaning like we don't feel like there's any, like I said, urgency or something like pressure on us. We feel just very connected, very present, like in the moment. So a lot of those thoughts are going to be kind of centered around that type of feeling or just like state essentially when we're in green.
What does red look like?
Yeah. So when we get to red is like I said, like the last resort of the system, because the system is trying to solve the threat, because if our system picks up on a threat, then it tries to go to yellow first. And if yellow doesn't work, we'll talk about yellow in a moment, then kind of the last resort is red. And so when we get to red, it's like here we become more apathetic. We're just like, oh, what's the point? It's not going to work out. Or maybe there's a feeling too, like I want to, but I can't. So this is where we can also notice like more procrastination. And this is where when I see founders or executives or entrepreneurs that kind of get to the red zones because they've been in yellow either for most likely a really long time. So now the system's like really kind of tapped out and really trying to conserve energy. So the thoughts become kind of like, like apathetic, or nothing's going to change. It doesn't matter. I don't have any energy. I'll answer that email later. I don't even want to look at my inbox. Like that's some of the thoughts of red.
So it's like a very kind of just doesn't even want to get out of bed kind of state.
Yeah, pretty much. There's like almost like this. Yeah, exactly. It's a shutdown. Yeah, it's burnout. That's it. Okay. Exactly. Okay. It's noticeable burnout once we're in red, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And what's yellow then?
So yellow is our sympathetic response. So when we're in yellow, again, like there's an aspect of thing, I have to do this right now. So I got to answer that email right now. I have to answer this client right away. I don't have enough time to get everything done. There's this aspect of impatience, like it has to happen right now. And if I sent that message, how come they haven't responded yet? Are they upset with me? Is something wrong? Like those are the types of thoughts. There's more, but like generally speaking, we will have when we're in yellow, or like I need to push harder. I'm going to fall behind. I'm not doing enough to prove myself. Those are some of the thoughts that we'll have when we're in yellow.
Interesting. Okay. I'm trying to relate to myself as you're saying these things. What if you have impatience? Like my thing is this, like I preach a lot on impatience. Mm-hmm. I think like, and whether it's a good thing or not, but for me, it's like, even it's one of our values as a company. Like if something needs to get done, get it done now. Yeah. And it's because I'm just a strong believer that speed, like money loves speed. And if you want to build a business, a successful business, like you need to be quick because you're going against the market, which is changing dramatically, very, very quickly, right? And competitors as well.
Yeah.
So what if you're impatient on a macro level in terms of getting projects done and etc., but you're patient on a micro level, like, okay, it's getting done, it's okay, like that email I've sent, they'll get back to me, etc. Like, does that still count?
Yeah, I love that you're kind of bringing up this distinction there, and I've actually never had anyone ask it that way, which is great. I love it. So, because you're right. I mean, it also depending on what field you're in, right? Like I work with a lot of people that, for example, are in tech, and so when you're in tech, it's like you said, it's moving so fast. It's like it's literally changing by the day, and so there is an element of like needing a certain level of speed in order just to like keep yourself relevant and keep yourself kind of ahead of the market, so to speak. So. Yes, but there's also such a thing as, like you said, is intentional speed though. So there's a kind of speed where we're just trying to like literally just keep up, and we're just again feeling the sense of like we're always behind. That's still signaling we're in yellow. But you can also have a certain speed that you're driving where it's like, okay, there's a direction. I know where we're going. I know what speed we're going at. I know we're going to get there. That feels more like green energy and thoughts versus that yellow, like, hurry it up. It's still not enough. We got to keep going, push ourselves more and more and more. Like that's push energy that feels like it's exhausting and you're never satiated. That's yellow. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense. I hope you're enjoying this podcast. I hope you're taking notes. I hope you're learning so much practical wisdom, because that's what I really wanted from this podcast. Now, I just want to quickly say, if you're looking for a team that can actually help you explode and go viral with your personal brand with proven methodologies, I say this because I've been doing this for the past 5 years. We've got a team of 30 people who are ready to go ahead and explode your brand so you can get clients begging to work with you. Have a chat with one of our advisors. You can book in a chat using one of the links around this video, because that chat might just change your life. I want to bring up something that I feel like it's insane how I'm making this connection. When I was a monk,
yes,
I was studying ancient like wisdom basically from Eastern India. And one of the books was the Bhagavad Gita. And within that, there's a discussion of something called the modes. We've got 3 different modes. And everything in this world has a mode attached to it. From the food that we eat, to the thoughts that we have, to the timing of the day, to everything. And the 3 modes, very similar to a traffic light system, right? You've got green, yellow, red. And so green is mode of goodness, which is all about how things can be difficult in the beginning, but it's amazing for you in the end. So like waking up early, a mode of goodness habit. Early morning is a mode of goodness time. Like simple, healthy foods are mode of goodness foods. They don't taste amazing, but they're good for you. Mode of passion, tastes amazing, for example, in the beginning, but not so great for you, right? It's very like unhealthy food, for example, or like spicy food. Equally time, right? During the day, it's like the busy hours of the day, right? So working daytime. There's mode of passion, right? And then there's mode of ignorance, which is just like poison for you throughout. So it's like, for example, smoking, right? Smoking's not good for you throughout. Or like staying up really, really late. Like there's no positive outcome of that, for example. And it's crazy because you're speaking about this and it's like, it relates to that, like this whole traffic light system, right? And the thing is, I use those modes in business. I'm always like, are we operating in a mode of goodness? Like, am I operating in a mode of goodness? Because that, yes, it may be painful in the beginning, but it's going to be so much better for us in the end. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs operating in the mode of passion, which is your yellow state, which is what you said. So it's crazy. Like,
wow, I love that connection, and I've never heard of anyone like share that with me before. And you're right; it's incredible the link there of these 3 different zones or states, right? And you even studied when you were a monk. That's incredible. And yeah, I love that you also said something too that was really key there, which is this aspect around. And I teach a lot of this to my clients and help them with this. It's around capacity too. So our nervous systems, like all of our nervous systems, have a container essentially, so like a cup. And so and most people these days, which makes sense, right? We have our childhood experiences, we have our businesses, we have all this stress from, our personal lives, work, whatever, and this cup can get very, very full. And it's almost like, so then we want to grow or we want to expand or do more in our life or our businesses. It's like our nervous system's like, well, I don't have any more space. And so there's an element of actually needing to stretch ourselves. Like you said, sometimes when we're in even the green zone, there's going to be elements of needing to kind of stretch in order to grow, like kind of, to challenge oneself, right? And it's not always comfortable. That's the thing. Nervous system work isn't necessarily comfortable. And I tell this to my clients because we're stretching you. We are also removing old patterns and things you no longer need anymore. So we have more space in this container for the things that you do desire, right? Well, we have to empty things out first in order to create that space, in order to create that capacity. And the more your business is growing, the more visible you are, the more you are positioned for potential rejection, right? Like all these things that our nervous system actually can sense as a threat. And so we have to create a certain amount of capacity for what you're growing into.
What does that look like? So if someone was going to be working with you and they're saying like, they want to get to this green zone and you're going to be helping them stretch themselves and remove certain things to create that capacity, what does that look like?
Yeah, so there's a couple. I work in like essentially like 2 stages with my clients. So in the beginning stage is a lot of just awareness piece, like where are you going, like in your business. So like being able to map, like we just did now, like when you're working in your social media or creating content for that, what zone do you feel like you're in? What zone do you feel like you're in when you're connecting with clients or you're doing any type of outreach in some way, or you're in sessions with clients, depending on what it is that what they do, or with your team, right? So we start with that mapping, and then once we kind of get a sense of like, okay, where your system for the most part is kind of defaulting to in these different zones, then I give people like simple little, like I call them micro exercises or neuro tools that essentially help the system to move out of that zone. So let's say someone's in a lot of yellow when they're doing their marketing, they're in a lot of yellow when they're selling. Then I will give them like certain tools that take anywhere from like 30 to 60 seconds that'll help shift the system out of that yellow and more into more of the green. So we can signal the system that when I'm doing this, I don't have to be in yellow to do marketing. I don't have to be in yellow to sell to people. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people have been getting that messaging, even from well-meaning coaches and business people, like you have to be in yellow. You have to be in yellow if you want to grow and expand, but it's not sustainable for the individual. You're going to reach a point where the system's gonna be like, I can't operate like this any longer because we're not designed to be in yellow. So it's a short-term reward and we want the long-term reward, right? So essentially these exercises look like, I don't know, working essentially like with your vagus nerve. It's a 10th cranial nerve. It's like applying a little bit of brake. So when you're in yellow, you're highly mobilized. You're going like 100 miles an hour. And it's like, we need to just we don't need to slam on the brakes. We just need to like go maybe 70 or 75. We want to modulate the amount of sympathetic energy you have so that your system can continue for the long run, right? So that starts with that phase, awareness, these little mini exercises that they'll do in between their meetings or their day. So we're signaling the system we don't need so much yellow. And then the second piece of this is getting to the root of why the system is associating these things as a threat. So what is the root cause? What is our nervous system's association with these activities? What is it feeling or thinking or associating? So for a lot of my clients, they carry, there's lots of things, but they're actually underneath a lot of sales issues or marketing issues, is aspect of intimacy, of being seen, of being rejected, And so when we get to kind of the root of that piece of things, then we find that their system then feels less of a threat than connecting with others and selling and things like that. And being consistent.
I love that. I really love that. So we get a lot of clients and students where initially they're kind of shy on camera. You know, we're creating all this content for them. We're doing everything. All we need for them to do is record. And even that, they struggle a little bit. And it's been incredible to see the growth of their journey from that standpoint. Like they started off super shy and obviously they're smashing it. Yep. I've always seen that as just like a measure of just holding them accountable. Like they just show up regularly, eventually things will change. But I'd be curious to know from your end, what are things that you can say that would help get them from that area? Yeah. What would you define that? Would you define that as a yellow or a red? Like,
ooh, that's a great one. I feel like it's actually kind of in the middle. It's what's called freeze. So it's a blended state of yellow and red. So we're hitting the gas. We want to do the thing. We have a lot of like thoughts around like how we want to do it. And then there's a little bit of that red where there's a break happening. So it's like two opposing forces. I want to, but I can't. This is so common, and particularly when it's something new. So anytime the system is introduced to something new as well, you're going to get a little bit of that because the system says, I don't have a blueprint for this. I've never done this before, number one. So I'm going to automatically put that in the threat category because I have no roadmap for what this looks like and what the result is going to be. And then number two is going to be just an element again, like if I've had experiences in the past where I spoke out or I used my voice, or I was doing a presentation, or even just at home being seen and heard by my family, that sometimes resulted in things that didn't feel good. Therefore, the system's still making those associations, even though cognitively we know, what does that have to do with making a video and speaking online with like how I was when I was 5 with my parents, but the system doesn't see a distinction. It's based on experiences. And so when we put ourselves forward and spoke out, sometimes we were shamed, maybe we were criticized, maybe, something good didn't happen essentially that we experienced. So we don't want to experience that again. So we're going to protect you by putting on the brakes here.
Makes sense. And what are kind of tips or like strategies that, these students or clients can implement just to like quickly get them into that kind of green state?
So that's a great question. So one thing I have my clients practice, first of all, doing it like little by little. The system likes to kind of doing things titrated. So meaning that's not like super slow, but like making new associations with what's happening. So number one is maybe first just like starting with to delineate it down. First step, just turning on the camera. So like, for example, with your clients, right? Like don't have to record anything yet, but just get comfortable with the camera being on. Maybe the second step then after like a minute or two is just like maybe speaking out a few words. You're not recording yet, but you're just kind of getting the system like, hey, I'm here and there's no threat, right? You can also have something where you're doing a tool, like a little neuro tool, which one of them I tell my clients to do is like, you keep your head straight, but you look all the way to the right for like 30 seconds. And then you look all the way to the left for 30 seconds. And so this is activating your vagus nerve. So that's helping again to kind of apply a little bit of break to that highly mobilized energy. It's helping to signal the system we're not in a danger or a threat right now. So again, like each time you come to the camera or, trying to record something, do a little micro break or a neuro tool like that. It's going to help the system to make new associations with what we are doing. And then the third step is like, then you just keep continuing. Like then now you hit record, right? And then, or having maybe something written out ahead of time that you can look at just to get your system kind of used to the experience of what this is and what this can look and feel like.
Right. So almost like train yourself into it, baby steps.
Exactly. It has to be baby steps. We can throw you in the deep end of the pool too, or just like hit record and just do it. And some people like, they go in hard, right, so to speak. But it, again, in terms of sustainability, that's not necessarily what we want. And the system catches on. It depends on, your system. But like for the most part, like if you're doing it in a way that is slow like that, taking one kind of piece at a time and giving it an experience, eventually, it gets it and goes, oh, okay, this is fine. Like I'm not getting any more threat here. Yeah.
So almost train, like literally, like baby steps, train yourself into it. And
Another thing I tell my clients too is if they're noticing a lot of freeze when they're trying to record something, is record with somebody. So first start with having someone that your system associates as like someone encouraging or like someone you really connect with. And just like practicing with another person, because again, like the system's like, I have no roadmap for this, and I don't even know what to say. And sometimes people also get kind of stuck. Like they'll like the camera turns on, suddenly their voice kind of like just like goes silent, like they don't know what to say. And so the first couple times, just like having someone with you on camera that you're just like talking with, they're asking you questions, you're reading from something, whatever, but like it's giving your system a blueprint of safety for this experience.
So I guess it first starts with the awareness that there have been associations made in my past with this activity, which is creating a threat for me.
Yes.
And I need to change the associations through either baby steps or finding new associations to this. Exactly.
Okay. Give my system new. So basically a disconfirming experience is what you want. Because right now the data or what it's stored is something opposite of that. So we need to give you I need to have a disconfirming experience.
Right. Like you need to prove to yourself that this is not the case as my subconscious has previously seen, essentially.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
I need evidence of safety. Yes.
Evidence of safety that this is okay.
Yes.
My question earlier, which I think I understood as you were speaking, was going to be that it seems like these states can be different for different activities. So I can be green in one activity and yellow in another activity.
Exactly. Yes. Our system, it's not like we're always like in one state all the time throughout our day. We fluctuate through these different states. And you're right, depending on the activity or who we're with is going to determine what our system associates and what zone we're going to be in.
Sweet. And what kind of transformations have you seen as a result of like working on these things?
Oh, so many amazing things. One of them, I'll just give an example of a recent client of mine. She was feeling really comfortable with Instagram, but her main audience was actually on LinkedIn. So she was in the corporate for a long time. She burned out. Then she decided she wanted to become a coach, and she's amazing. And she was doing a lot of stuff on Instagram. Instagram is great. Like, it's a great social media platform. But then when she really was looking at the audience, she's like, actually, a lot of my people that I'm targeting, because she wanted to work with teams, she was like really kind of more focused on helping her corporate folks, was actually on LinkedIn. But her system was associating LinkedIn as like this like very like serious place, and like she couldn't make any mistakes. These are her colleagues. Like it felt like she would get into freeze when it came to like posting content or putting anything out there to LinkedIn. Right. Also, because her system associated corporate with burnout, it was like, I don't want nothing to do with that. I want to go somewhere where I don't feel any of that corporate energy. And that's Instagram or, maybe another platform. Right. So when I was working with her system, I think a couple months, meaning like just again, like giving her these neuro tools, working at the subconscious root of how her system was associating the LinkedIn with her burnout. Now she's like posting on LinkedIn like all the time. She's on Instagram still, but like she has no problem. She's getting so much great feedback. Clients are reaching out to her now. And so it's amazing. So that's just one example of a transformation that was incredible. Another client of mine, she was noticing she was kind of at a ceiling with her income, like no matter how much she was doing in terms of marketing or sales strategy. And she was working all these different business coaches, which were incredible. And she did learn some things, but she wasn't really getting beyond the income mark that she wanted. And so we worked with her nervous system. And part of this is because her system, this is particularly to her, had associated, if I go beyond this amount, people are going to reject me. Like, people aren't going, my family, my friends, like they're going to see me now as like someone that they can't associate with. So again, this wasn't conscious on her part, but her nervous system said like, this is where we stop. We don't go farther than this, because if we go farther than this, then we're going to be rejected by others, or people aren't going to like us like they are right now. So we worked on that piece of things and got her system to associate that more income was not a threat to her. Yeah. She's now like, she's like broken through that, no problem. And like is actually able, like all the things that she was trying before are actually landing and working now because her system's on board.
Wow. And you obviously, you said it wasn't conscious, right? And that was going to be my question, right? How did you figure out that was the concern at the end? Like that was the root of her income?
Yeah. But another great question. So, well, first of all, I was kind of looking at like when she was posting or using some of these strategies, what state was she in? And I could tell by certain thoughts that she was having. So we were kind of mapping, like, what are your thoughts? Like, what are you noticing in your physical body? And she was noticing a lot of tension, even though she said consciously she wasn't like feeling necessarily stressed or tense, but like when she really started to pause for a moment, she was like, oh, actually, yeah, my jaw gets really tight when I'm like, writing the content, or I start like posting something online. I started to notice that like my stomach would get a little bit kind of churny. Like And again, she didn't necessarily connect it with what she was doing in that moment, but we started to make the connection that, okay, there's something that your system's seeing here as a threat. And then this sort of series of getting her body into more, let's say, relaxed state, I was able to kind of ask some questions, and the subconscious started to kind of speak to me. And essentially there was a part of her that kind of spoke and said, I'm afraid that if we do this, like, we're going to be rejected. And finally that thought was able to come forth, or that feeling or emotion, that we were able to finally connect all the dots of like, oh, this is why you feel tension in your jaw when every time you go to like write an email or post something online, right? Like, and it's second nature to her to do all this. So it wasn't like she was freezing, but she just wasn't getting any result, and the result that she wanted. And that was because her system was resisting it. Yeah.
Wow. I always say there's so many subtleties that we just can't account for if we
Yes.
like been going on because of our subconscious operating in a certain way. And like her being reluctant to write this post, even if the post was strategically a perfect post,
Yes.
it was still, there are still subtleties that we just can't account for because she just wasn't in the right state, right? And
Exactly.
that's what it's in. I love it. I really love it. Okay, amazing. I want to talk about your business because I know we haven't got a lot of time, but let's talk about your business. So you started this Instagram, you started taking Instagram seriously in 2020.
Yeah.
What was your business like then at that time?
Yeah, so at that time, I was seeing actually clients in person. So I live here in San Francisco, and I had to have a little bit of an office here. And so most of my work I was doing was in person. I did some remote work because I had some clients that were remote, but not a ton. And so at that time too, I really decided like, hey, I want to grow this and expand this. And it was interesting too, because at that time, my nervous system thought, it's interesting going back 4 years now, but like, no one knows nervous system. It's going to take a lot of education and a lot of awareness and work if you bring this to more people, like, this is going to just be essentially a lot of energy you're going to have to put out here. And that wasn't necessarily true, but that was a part of what my nervous system thought at the time. And so, but then the pandemic hit, and then it was like, okay, well, now we got to do this. Like, I want this to go to more people because I see the impact that it's having on people's lives too. And so then even though I knew a lot of people didn't know the term nervous system, I was like, okay, let's get creative and figure out, let's get me into the green zone so I can start figuring out what are some other ways I can talk about this where people just immediately say, oh yeah, I want this or I need this, even if they don't have any idea what the nervous system specifically is. Also, because I realized people buy based on emotion, people buy based on how they feel when they're interacting, not so much like needing always to know always the how. And so I started to, just kind of go online a little bit. I made a few posts that was speaking to these different states, like kind of just some educational posts, and then also just some ones that were just kind of like getting into a feeling or an emotion around your business. Also, because at that time too, I didn't see a lot of content where people were linking the nervous system to business. And I specifically wanted to bridge that in the market. I knew there was a gap in the market there. So I was really excited to see that. And because I was in the green zone, I was able to see that gap. And that's when I started to put forth content that was speaking directly about business and sales and the state of your nervous system. And then people just started, liking the post, sharing these posts because they hadn't heard this before. It was a little bit of like a blue ocean experience there. And then in 2022, I had a post that went, viral. I mean, it was like, I think it was over 100,000 people liked it. I think I had 100,000 saves. Like it was, pretty much everyone who liked it saved the post. And then I got that's when the growth like really kind of took off, and like my Instagram, because everybody all of a sudden was like, okay, I want to know more about this. Like, what is this? And actually the post was, she leads with her nervous system. And then in that post, I kind of talked about like what that meant, like leading from your nervous system. And it really related to a lot of people, which was exciting to see.
Amazing. I want to touch on this viral post in just a sec, but I also want to ask, because I feel like our listeners would want to know this. What was your thoughts? You said you had to get yourself to the green zone to start this content. What were your thoughts before, and what were your thoughts when you were at the green zone?
So before, like I said, I was noticing a little bit of that red and yellow coming up, a little bit of that freeze, because I was doing so well in the business the current model that I had, but then, essentially like it was time to grow, it was time to expand, it was trying to outreach more people with this. And COVID, where the pandemic was sort of the opportunity to do that. And so I did have to kind of stretch myself, right? And again, I told you the system wants to keep you safe. And sometimes like stretching or growing sometimes can be seen as like a threat too. So you kind of have to work through some of that discomfort. So initially I thought my first thoughts and feelings were like, is anyone going to understand this? Like, is anyone going to get this? Like, what kind of languaging do I have to use for this? It's really going to land with people. So I was kind of overthinking it a little bit. And then I was like, okay, hold on here. I'm in this zone. I need to like, change this and get to green. And so what I did was a couple things. One was I did some of those neuro tools that I mentioned to you. So anytime I open social media, I was giving my nervous system like new associations with just like being on the app and like, what was it like to engage, and also just, post something without needing a certain outcome, right? And then the other piece was doing other things, getting into creativity. So for me, when you get into the green zone, you're using a lot of creative energy. So I was also putting on music. I was taking long walks. I was doing other things that were getting me into this feeling of the green zone. And so eventually started to get all these ideas and like content. It was just coming in. Like I didn't even have to force it. I didn't have to change my thoughts. Like because I changed the state, like my thoughts started to change, and therefore, I got access to even more creativity. And that's how I was able to create, the content that I did.
Love it. So your thoughts before almost like, okay, I want to do this, but I don't feel comfortable doing this.
Yes.
And your thoughts in green were like, I've got so many ideas. Let's make this happen.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Love it. Love it. And then you went viral, and that was like,
yes,
everything popping, we say this to clients all the time, like going viral is amazing, right? It can really we've seen businesses and our clients literally transform overnight from a viral post.
Yes.
We had, actually, you mentioned a corporate speaker. We had a corporate leadership coach on Instagram. One post took her completely viral, 11 million views. She then got invited by Pepsi, got spotted by the DOJ.
Wow.
Like everything, right? So yes. I can definitely see that happening for you when you mentioned that you went viral that time. So obviously since then, what's been the case then? Have you been consistently going viral? What's been the social media scene been like for you?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question too. So, and I also want to say I don't post content necessarily all the time. Like, I'm very active in my stories, and that is something that's like an art for me. Like, I do show up there consistently. I show up in a certain way, so people relate certain things to me and my brand. So again, I'm very intentional when I'm in the stories. Well, same with my posts too, but like I'm consistent in terms of like the way I show up in stories. Content, I would say, I try to do like at least every couple of weeks, I put something out there. And when I do, I've been getting like so much traction still. Like, and I actually look not just at the likes, I look at who's saving and sharing my posts. And I've noticed like almost every post I've put out there in the last, even just let's say the last couple of months, even I've noticed that majority of people are more saves even than like likes to the post, and so many shares. And I'm like, oh, this is exciting because we're just getting like, this out there to so many more people. So I think I'll give you an example. There was one post I did on like signs your nervous system is seeking clarity. So how do you know when your system is like looking for clarity around something? I think this relates to probably a lot of people, especially if you're in business. And so for me and I found this like really amazing. Like I had 960 saves to this post, 550 people shared it. And that was incredible, and like almost like 1,200 likes. And then there was another one too. Hold on, see if I can find it. But
you done other content like that since, like signs that your nervous system?
Yeah, I have a lot of people love the signs ones, like being able to understand. So yeah, I have like signs, for example, of what's another one here? Signs of a nervous system that can't rest. So like because oftentimes we also think of rest as like just going to sleep or, things like that, but there's mental rest, there's, physical, emotional rest. And so like, what are some signs that your nervous system is struggling to rest? So people related to a lot of those signs as well when I posted that. So I love posting content like that.
Yeah. I would combine that with anything that's going to create polarity and controversy. So for example, signs that the business that you're in isn't right for you. Something like that. I would definitely test, because
thank you.
Anything polarizing or creating controversy internally, because that would create controversy internally for a viewer, because they're like, wait, am I in the right business? Am I not? Like that in itself would create engagement. Definitely something to consider. So then run me through your approach, right? So you obviously go viral, you get views. How do you then convert those views into clients?
Yes. So I get the views, yeah. And then people, one or two things. One is people will click on my intake form that I have. So they'll go to my bio, and I see a lot of activity there. Once they like the post or saved it, then they go to my bio, and then there's a link there to fill out an application or, a form essentially to speak with me. And then I also have people just reach out and will send me a DM and say, hey, your post really resonated with me. This is what I'm experiencing right now. Do you think it relates to the nervous system? And then we just start having a conversation. Usually I send voice notes back to people is how I like to engage. And I personally send them because I just like to personally engage with my clients. And the key to this is just for me, knowing that the science of it too is the sound of your voice also conveys the state of your nervous system. So how you speak and the tone and pitch of your voice conveys if you're in red, yellow, or green. That's a whole nother conversation. But essentially, so when people hear the sound of my voice, and I always make sure to send the message when I know I'm in green, their system picks up on that green and it signals safety to their system. And their system is essentially, it's a mirror response, like mirror neurons is working here through the sound of voice. And then they want to continue usually the conversation because it's let's say they're yellow, the system always wants to get to green. So if we're hearing green, it's okay, I want to lean into this.
Yeah.
So it's actually a strategy that I teach some of my clients, shifting your tone of your voice can actually also increase your sales. And this is why you're seeing audio and podcasting exploding these days. And this is why it's so key. You want your podcast, yes, your strategy, of course, of growing a podcast and the topics and things, but also what is the sound of your voice like? What are you conveying to people in the state of your nervous system based on the sound and pitch of your voice? And you will get way more people listening if your tone of voice is more in green. So, yeah.
Okay, let's pause the business conversation for a sec. I want to learn about this. So, okay, let's look at me, right?
Yeah.
What would you say my voice is in terms of states?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to get to, I guess if I'm already in green, then great. But if I'm not in green, what can I do to get to green?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you are you're very grounded. You do have a very stabilizing energy because I find what I was noticing when you were speaking is you do pauses. So sometimes people don't even pause a lot when they're speaking. So I love that. It means you're taking breaths. So the system does feel like it's a little bit less in that survival type of energy. Yeah, a little bit of yellow, again, and sometimes that can be also just excitement though too, based on the topics that you're discussing. And this is where there's a little bit of nuance in terms of excitement versus anxious energy and things like that. But yeah, overall though, you have a really good pitch and rhythm. You're not speaking too rapidly, you're not speaking too lowly, because when we have a low voice and kind of low tone, there's no inflection in the voice, that signals more red, you're in that kind of shutdown response, kind of flat voice. And then when we're in yellow, it's very rapid and we're not taking full breaths, we're not pausing, we might be talking over somebody, right? So, and again, it's all because the system's more in that yellow, but I'd say you're pretty good in green. I feel a little more green than I do yellow. There's little hints of yellow here and there, but I would also attribute that to a little bit of excitement. So
I think, I was going to say, whenever I'm learning new things, I get really excited.
Yeah. And that's great. And we also want to say to all your listeners, yellow's not bad. We need a certain amount of yellow, meaning some of that sympathetic energy. I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to you right now without some sympathetic mobilizing energy. So it's not that all sympathetic is bad. I think it gets a bad rap even. It's just when we have too much of it. So when we're too much in that means that we're in survival, and that's not sustainable for our system.
And just for my own satisfaction, so yellow is sympathetic, green is, what's the name? Well,
the technical term for green is ventral vagal. So it's your home state, it's the home state your body and brain was designed to live in 90% of the time.
And yellow is sympathetic, and red is?
Dorsal vagal shutdown. So shutdown, you can call it shutdown.
Right.
Yeah.
So home state, shutdown is red, yellow is, just
fight or flight. You can call it fight or flight. Yellow is fight or flight. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, sweet. So back to your business. So you have a pretty good strategy in place, right? So people either fill in the form or they DM you and outreach. Do you outreach as well to your followers?
When I have new people joining me, so in the last month, I would say my followers grew by 1,000. So I obviously couldn't outreach all of those people, but some people that I saw that was following me that I had mutual connections to in some way, or I felt would be, a potential fit in terms of collaborative or maybe a client, I was reaching out and leaving kind of, personal voice notes to some of those people. So that was sort of my outreach. I don't necessarily do a lot of like direct. I have people just generally coming to me. I don't need necessarily a lot to in that respect, which is great, and also I have a certification program that's coming up in the spring. So I've had also just like people recently reaching out about that, like really wanting to learn about this work and get certified in it so they can also, become a nervous system coach. So, yeah.
And the bigger your following will grow, the more credibility you'll achieve with a certification program. So like it will just all, it will all fall into place. I can see that. Okay. And for you right now, what are you most struggling with when it does come to social media?
Yeah, that's another great question. I would say,
you mentioned you post once a week. How comes you don't post more often than once a week?
I think that's a struggle. I mean, I want to say struggle, but I would say it's something I need to kind of stretch myself more on, because I guess because one of my mentors actually said this, like your feed, and it's like a part of your curriculum. So I don't just post to just post something. I want to put something out there that I can really stand behind. It's like a part, like when they enter my page, it's like they're entering into a part of my curriculum. So this is where I think I need to kind of stretch myself a little bit more in terms of like creating that curriculum, but a little more consistently in terms of the actual posts versus in stories too, because I do take intentional time to create stories. So this is where, again, like stretching my capacity to do both, like taking the time to create the stories, and then also, of course, like increasing my capacity to create more of that curriculum in my feed as well.
Yeah. What's the goal for the business for 2025?
The goal is to, get more students into our nervous system certification program, which got recently accredited by ICF. So you get 20 ICF credits if you take our nervous system certification. R meaning I have a business partner. So we run this program together, and I believe it's the first nervous system certification that has been accredited by ICF, at least so far that I've seen. So that's really exciting. So we have a spring cohort that's starting in March 2025. And we've already got people enrolling now, actually, which is super exciting. This is the first time we haven't officially even rolled it out or launched it yet. And we already have people reaching out and signing up. So I'm excited. Yeah, my goal is to fill that cohort. We want like roughly 20 to 30 students for March of 2025. So I think we're going to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What I'm going to do, I just know that anyone who's watching this is going to want to see your Instagram. So let me share screens just so everyone can see whilst we're on this. Are you seeing my screen? I'm seeing my screen.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's coming on. There we go. Yes.
Okay, so the form is here. This one?
Yep.
Okay, so that's a simple Google Doc form. So literally anyone can set this up, right? Like anyone building a coaching business can literally set up a Google form, add it in their bio. And then you've got kind of small Stripe.
Yeah, that one's just like for people who maybe want to kind of test it out. Like, what are these sessions like, right? Get a feel for, what the experience is. And then, take a 3-session one. Yeah.
Love it. And you're designing these yourself?
Yes.
And that's, I'm assuming, done on Canva or something?
Yes, Canva. Yes, exactly.
Super simple, right? Super simple. Anyone can do this. Yes. Come up with the content ideas yourself?
I do, yes.
Do you have like a strategy for it? Or is it very much?
No, I mean, there's a little bit of a strategy. Like usually what I'll look at is kind of like, what am I seeing with my clients, So again, taking some case studies sometimes too, like what I'm seeing currently happening and like noticing like, hey, this is something I think more people would want to know about and make connections with. Sometimes I'll also, in terms of strategy, I will kind of look at how it's connecting with offers that I'm currently putting out there, right? So in terms of like, for example, I had an offer with an 8-week program recently I did a couple months back where we were looking at the father wounds and like how that relates to the nervous system and your business and things like that. So I was making a lot of content around the nervous system and father wounds so people could like, make that connection. So that's sort of like usually my strategy is what am I putting forth that the type of content that makes sense for people to look at that would kind of drive them into looking into like reaching out about that program or offering. Sometimes it's just like educational posts. We're just getting more things out there for people to bring more awareness so that when I do have an offer, then they're, really engaged and see me as that expert.
Love it. What we advise is also on just on that, like the fact you're doing that is incredible. So you'll typically listen to kind of what are your clients reaching out about? What are they typically speaking about? A grander way of looking at that principle of what is my audience looking at is literally looking at other videos and other content that has done significantly well related to your niche.
Okay.
And using information.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Definitely recommend that. Because there may be a video out there that's gone viral, like the hook that I just said, right? Signs that your nervous system is telling you that your business is right for you or not. And that will give you insight. Like, I should definitely make content on this, for example.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love that. Thank you for that suggestion. Yeah, I love that. And it's something that will really be helpful and I want to implement. Good.
Sure. Amazing. Yeah. Well, Laura, I want to end this on a final question. What is one piece of advice you can give to all entrepreneurs out there that whether they're just getting started or whether they're already, successful in their business, that they could adopt into their lifestyle on a daily basis to continuously get them to that kind of green zone?
Yeah, that's like, there's so many different things, but I would first just say, that's a big question. I guess I would first just say, every day, like let's say you're going to your phone or your computer, wherever it is that you're doing, your work. And before starting anything, just notice, what zone am I in? And if you don't know, just like, again, kind of just notice, like, am I noticing any tightness anywhere? Where are my thoughts right now? And so before doing anything, then just see if you can start to shift your state, meaning that maybe doing, having a cup of warm tea in your hands and noticing the temperature. Maybe that means doing the eye exercise I mentioned, maybe stretching your body a little bit. Again, like kind of getting connected more with where am I right now before I even engage with people or the world or my content or my business. And even just taking 30 seconds or a minute to do that is really going to take you far, because, my clients that take these intentional kind of pauses before they jump into anything these days, and in terms of their nervous system and making new associations with what we're doing is going to grow and expand you and really just take you to places you didn't even know were possible. So I would start there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, growth will only come with awareness, right? So just start with there.
Yeah.
Love it.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you feel like you want to share?
No, I think that's everything. The nervous system is your superpower. So definitely get interested in the nervous system. And like I said, it's incredible in terms of how it relates to everything in your life. Yeah.
Perfect. And if anyone wanted to reach out, I'm assuming Instagram is the place.
Yeah, Instagram is a great place to reach out. Yes.
Okay. Is there anywhere else that you want them reaching out to?
Also, I'm on LinkedIn. My website's under construction at the moment. So LinkedIn or Instagram are the two great places. Yeah. And LinkedIn is also Laura Lisa Larios. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Laura. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
And, to all the listeners and all the viewers, I hope that you guys can take away the fact that this can clearly be transformational. So I'm looking forward to everyone else implementing it. I myself am going to be implementing it. So I'm really happy about this conversation. So
amazing. Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. I want you to go away and execute everything there is that you've learned. Now, one thing I will say is if you're in a position where you're ready to actually take things to another level, you want structured, clear guidance, you want a team that can actually help accelerate you, book in a chat with our advisors. Why? We can blow up your personal brand to attract clients begging to work with you. All you got to do is book in a chat with our advisors and we can help make it happen. Sound fair enough?